Good morning, everyone. I'm Delene Taylor. I am a board member with the Morton Center and the person who's helped Priscilla coordinate this fantastic event. So we're so grateful that you all have made time. We're going to try to respect your time, and I would like to welcome Father Eifler to the stage to give our invocation.
How good it is for us to be here today and celebrate 35 years. The people who have gone through this program and who have been with us on our journeys are to be congratulated. And as we come together, we ask God to be with us, the God of righteousness, the God of justice, and the God of peace. Grant us, O Lord, to be sure in faith, strong in hope, perfect in love, so that amid the challenges of our day, we may do whatever we can to make our world better, to build up peace and justice, to forgive others, and to bring more and more to our community of love and peace, to a world, and especially to each other. Bless us, O Lord, in these thy gifts, which we are about to receive from thy bountiful hands through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you everyone for coming. So in order to get this party started right, as we're celebrating 35 years, would everybody please grab your glass? Let's do a cheers. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for your support to the organization, and here's to another 35 years. I would like to introduce to you the MC for today, Jennifer Bayliss, who is with WLKY. Jennifer.
Thank you. Please continue eating. As she mentioned, my name's Jennifer Bayliss with WLKY. I anchor the 6 o'clock news in the evening, Monday through Friday, alongside Rick Van Hoos, so this is my only shameless plug for the whole day. Please watch. We are doing some great things, and I'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. I'm really honored to be with you. When I was asked to do this event, I said, absolutely, Morton Center is doing amazing things. I just want to help however I can. The Morton Center is doing great work, as I mentioned, and before you leave today, you will have the opportunity to offer your support. Get into the work that they're doing and help give hope to families right here in our region. We're already off to a great start, though. We have a match for every dollar raised today, so let's make that match go a long way. Yes, that's great. To start off an event like this with a match is amazing. Just a little bit about the Morton Center. It's named after United States Senator Thruston B. Morton. His sister Jane Morton Norton and Counselor John P. Walsh founded the Morton Center in 1984 in Senator Morton's memory. He died, though, in 1982 after representing Kentucky in the U.S. House and Senate, as well as serving as chairman of the Republican National Committee. We are honoring Senator Morton and his sister Jane today. If you look up to the stage, their picture is right there, so they'll be with us all day. More than 35 years later, her legacy, the Morton Center, has helped provide services to 43,800 families. That's families. Think about that for a minute. And we are honored today to have John Walsh here to speak along with Joanne Watson, who introduced John Walsh to Jane Morton Norton, along with many in the audience that have helped support the Morton Center the last 35 years. And September, of course, most of you know, is National Recovery Month, and this year marks the 30th anniversary. The 2019 Recovery Month theme is Join the Voices for Recovery, Together We Are Stronger. Emphasizes the need to share resources and build networks across the country to support the many paths to recovery. We have to do this together. It reminds us that mental and substance use disorders affect all of us. We know addiction is a family disease. One person may use, but the whole family suffers. But we are all part of the solution. That's why each year the Morton Center celebrates its annual luncheon in September during Recovery Month. At WLKY, we believe it is our responsibility to help our community. As part of that, we have faced the current drug epidemic head-on with a series called State of Addiction. Along with airing addiction and recovery stories during our newscasts and having a 30-minute special from time to time, we also have a phone bank every month, which many of you have helped us out with. We have experts in the addiction field answering the phones, and we invite people at home watching our news to call in. And this is great because there's still a stigma around addiction and recovery. So the folks at home can be anonymous, and they can call from the comfort of their home and not be judged. It's really hard to measure a news series in success and a phone bank in success, but from time to time, I'll hear from a viewer or a family member who says, because of what you guys are doing, my son, my daughter, or I have gotten help. I've asked for help. That moment of clarity was when I watched WLKY. So I mark that as success. But our work is not done. We started the series thinking it would only be a year, and our parent company, Hearst, and all of our stations across the country have taken part and continue to take part in this state of addiction. If you go on social media and you put the hashtag state of addiction, you're going to see stories all across the country that our stations are doing. We have decided that the work we're doing is too important to stop. So we're going to continue our series, our phone banks, anything that we can do indefinitely, because every single life matters. The last aspect of our State of Addiction series is probably the most important aspect that nobody really knows about. Myself, along with representatives from the FBI, travel around to middle and high schools to speak to middle and high schoolers about addiction and recovery. Our experiences with the drug epidemic, and hopefully helping our next generation to make healthy decisions. With that, I would like to bring Delene Taylor, our luncheon chair, back to the stage for some brief remarks. Thank you.
All right, please continue eating, and I'll give you a few minutes after I'm finished to eat as well. So I just want to recognize the many people that have helped make the last 35 years and what the Morton Center does possible. First, I would like to thank our sponsors. If you are with one of the sponsors, hate to ask you to interrupt your eating, but would you please stand up so we can acknowledge you? Brown-Forman, Sam Swope, Family Foundation, Stephen C. Galt Company, the Glenview Trust Company, Norton Healthcare, and our media sponsor, WLKY. I'd also like to thank our table sponsors, which we actually call chair sponsors, as part of our we have a chair for everyone theme. You'll notice the centerpieces in your tables are chairs, and you'll hear more about that later. But I'd like to thank our chair sponsors, Anthem Medicaid, Dr. Walter Badenhausen, Butchertown Market, Jamie and Kelly Cox, John and Sally Cunningham, DMLO CPAs, John and Robert English, HDJI Supply Chain Solutions, Al and Barbara Horton, Kindred Foundation, Craig Lynch, Dr. Ernest Marshall, Clay Morton, James K. Murphy, Kenneth and Marianne Rutlinger, Mark and Stuart Robinson, Mary Ellen Stopman, the Eye Care Institute, and the Brook Hospitals. Please give them a round of applause. Now I would like to ask all of our board members that are in attendance to stand and be recognized, along with the Morton Center staff. And if all of our state and local representatives would stand, please, elected officials, public servants, anyone that holds a position in our state or local government. And finally, all of our community partners that also work in the recovery space. Please stand. All right, take a few minutes to eat, and then I will be back up to introduce our next speaker.
All right, we're going to get going with the program so that we can get the speakers and then make sure that you all are able to leave on time also. We know you all have other things that you've got to tackle today. So I would like to call Mr. Steve Galt. Although I don't really call him Mr. Steve Galt, I just say, hey, Steve, it's me again. Can you give me a call? So I'd like to call Steve Galt up to speak. He is a longtime supporter of the Morton Center and served 2 terms as president on the Morton Center board also. So thank you. Here's Mr. Galt.
Okay, thank you, Priscilla, and welcome to everybody. In 2014, when Priscilla informed me that the board of directors wanted to establish this award in my name, I was both touched and humbled, and I said, well, let me think about it. And 2 seconds later, I said, hell yes. I asked her if I could be the presenter of the award this year, not to have the opportunity to nail the recipient to the wall, but rather because I know him so well and our respective journeys have a number of common threads and similarities. He has performed excellent work for me personally as a real estate lawyer. My sister Jenny, who's with me today at my table, and Mark's wife, Stuart, who is here today, have been great friends since early high school days. Mark and I each now have over 25 years of recovery. Yeah. We are both past presidents of the Morton Center and remain unwavering champions of the organization. There is one difference, however. I obtained my undergraduate degree from the College of Worcester in Ohio, while Mark received his from Duke University in North Carolina. While I got to watch 4 years of outstanding men's college basketball, Mark just did not have that opportunity. Every March, he asked me with an ever so slight air of superiority if Worcester's is even in a postseason tournament at all. Mark Robinson is a great friend and a great friend of the Morton Center, and it gives me great pleasure to give him this award. Mark? There you go. Thank you so much. There you go. I'm going to walk off. Yeah, I'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve. Particularly for breaking my anonymity about Duke University. I've lived here for 34 years and kept that down low till now. I'm very honored to receive this award today. And when I was thinking about what I could say that would be appropriate, what kept coming back to me is that it's not, thanks that I should receive. It is I who should in turn give thanks. And I would like to take a minute to do that. First of all, to Steve. Steve should get this award pretty much every year. And that's why they named it after him, I think, to remind us that, and fittingly so. He and his family have supported this organization like no one else, and many of you in this room know that. He is my gold standard, both in philanthropy and in service. He leads by example. He got me involved and is still hard at work for this organization 25 years later. And he is a dear friend to me and to the Morton Center. I'd also like to give thanks to our featured speaker today, John Walsh, who had the vision to start and lead this organization through its formative years and has helped save so many lives, including mine. I'd like to thank Priscilla, who has taken the reins from John and has worked tirelessly to ensure that this organization is well run and has enabled it to survive and thrive through many, many challenges. I'd like to thank Jim Murphy and the current board who continue to lead and guide this organization. I'd like to thank the staff of the Morton Center who are in the trenches every day confronting the tragedy of addiction and saving lives. I'd like to thank my wife, Stuart, who has joined with me in providing the financial support that we have and is a true friend of the Morton Center in her own right. And then lastly, and certainly not least, I'd like to thank you for being here today and providing the support that you have. The Morton Center literally could not do this without you. My passion for the Morton Center and its mission come from personal experience. I first encountered it 30 years ago as a client, broken and deeply in need of help. I received that help in the form of individual and group counseling, which ultimately was life-changing for me and my family. So I know firsthand the importance of the work that they do. As a result of receiving that help, Steve and John gave me the opportunity to give back, which I did as a board member for 20 years and continue to do today as a financial supporter. When I consider the question of financial support of charitable organizations like the Morton Center, I'm always reminded of the passage in the gospel, which loosely translated states, "To whom much is given, much is expected." I also think about, if not us, then who? I hope you will consider these things and choose to support this wonderful organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Steve. I now call the man of the hour, the reason why many of us are able to be here today and many of us are still alive today. Mr. John Walsh, will you please come up? Thank you.
picture?
Yeah, hold on just a second.
Good.
Sorry.
Okay.
We have a little surprise for everyone today as well.
So just a little note of appreciation in celebration of the 35 years of philanthropy and community service. The Louisville Metro Council wanted to acknowledge this event officially with a proclamation. So today we just wanted to present this to the Morton Center and to the Board of Directors for all your work in this community.
Thank you.
If they both walked away, I guess it's me, huh? Man, I've been so relaxed and everything was just good, and I was making a few notes yesterday, and I kept thinking to myself, why are you so calm? Until Steve and Mark got up here. What a great honor and opportunity to simply share a perspective. That's all it is. That's all I got. But you know, some of you that know me know that on some of these occasions, I've stood up in front of a microphone or stood up in a room and talked loudly or whatever the case might be. And sometimes I've singled out somebody in the audience that didn't expect it with some relatively trashy or poignant or funny story. And I will absolutely, because I occasionally like to make a bet you that the person that I'm going to call a name out in about 10 seconds has no clue why I would do this. So let me tell you a story about Jennifer Bayless. I met Jennifer before. Jennifer and I were both participants in the first Dancing with the Stars fundraiser here in Louisville that was, I think the charity was the Dystonia Foundation. It was just immediately after I had left the Morton Center, and Dr. Esamundi, who was is a psychiatrist in town, and who is quite a dancer, was helping put this charity fundraiser together. And at that point in time, I guess the real Dancing with the Stars had been going on for a couple of years. And I full remember Jennifer and I both being participants in that. And if I had my yellow shirt with my bow tie and my suspenders, and I were still able to do the cha-cha, I would do that. What a shocker to my family. So the rest of everything is somewhat serious. I guess the interesting thing about being the guy that gets to give the perspective is it's my perspective. And if it's not completely accurate, I encourage anybody to come up afterwards, because I've got a few days on me now, and I'm sure that I don't remember all the dates and all that properly. But I'm going to do my best. I actually had lunch with Pee Wee Watson about 3 weeks ago. And we talked a little bit about this, and I was able to kind of verify some of this information. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Pee Wee story in a few minutes here. But first of all, I want to talk a little bit about what was going on in our field before the Morton Center came into existence. Priscilla asked me to kind of talk about, well, how and why did we found the Morton Center? Where did that come from? And part of that has to do with things that were so far above and beyond our control, and what we were able to do here in Louisville, Kentucky, that kind of set a tone or a stage for what became the Morton Center. So in our field in the early 80s, the national model for residential treatment was still really being developed. There were some treatment centers that did a 28-day program. Hazelden comes to mind very quickly. Some of you, I know, were graduates or alumni of Hazelden. There were some other programs. There was a program in St. Paul that I used at that time to refer people to called Twin Town. They had a 28-day model. There were some other programs. Actually, here in Kentucky in the middle 70s, there was a 28-day program that was developed out at Central State that was the forerunner for all residential treatment in this state, that also utilized principles of Alcoholics Anonymous as well as the best professional modalities in care that we could put together. And I was fortunate enough to be on that staff. But if we really looked across the country, there was not much uniformity. These programs kind of stood out because they stood out. And part of that is because they stepped out and tried to do some things that people really didn't even maybe understand when they were developed. There was still a very, very strong influence of behaviorism in our country that didn't even believe that addiction, in particular alcoholism, was a disease. They thought it was a behavioral issue that should be able to be modified, moderated, teach people responsible use. It had its day, so nationally there wasn't really very much. We certainly didn't have anything going on in our state, I think, at that time that anybody could look at and say, that's it. Also nationally, there really wasn't any type of a role model in terms of doing outpatient care for addiction. The development of intensive outpatient programs didn't really start until the early 80s. I don't think we had anything here until the middle 80s. And in terms of kind of traditional outpatient, just taking people and working with them individually, group-wise, so forth and so on, doing educational programs and all that, there really wasn't much of a model out there. In the early 80s, when I was involved in a private practice here, I used to go to the Twin Cities area, kind of the mecca for treatment, to try to talk to people and understand, well, what are you doing with this, or how are you doing this? And there were some frustrating times because there wasn't something there that I could grab a hold of, even for my own practice at that time, and say, this is what we need to be doing. There really wasn't any family treatment per se. A lot of these bigger programs, as part of their residential setting, had family days or family weeks or family 2 or 3 days, and they basically invited families and wanted families to attend, but family care was still only ancillary to the care for the alcoholic and the addict. So there wasn't any recognition in terms of the true family disease or disorder where people in the family system are themselves affected and then wound up with issues that they had to deal with. That just didn't and hadn't taken place yet at that time. The original Adult Children of Alcoholics Conference, that was a professional conference, took place in Orlando in 1983. Now, you know, the stuff that I'm talking about now is more than 35 years old. But it kind of, as I kind of thought about some of these things, these were all very, very important in terms of why what happened here was so important, not just to our community and to our region and to our state, but at a certain level, there were times later on that we were able to model some professional care that a lot of other people across the nation paid some attention to. The term codependency wasn't in existence yet. It was still either called co-alcoholism or it wasn't called anything. It was called those people. So there wasn't anything specific that spouses or partners or parents could find professionally for themselves to give them guidance to help them through counseling programs for themselves. And we all know, you cannot be here today and not know the devastation that families have as a result of this disorder. So it just wasn't happening. I'm going to now basically tell you 4 vignettes. They're stories. They're little stories. Clay, by the way, I'm sure you were nervous when I said something about calling somebody out for a story here, so yeah. I'm going to give you some relief this year. So the first story is the Pee Wee Watson story. Some of you know Pee Wee, some of you have never heard of her. You don't know by name, you don't know anything about what that means. So Pee Wee Watson in our lunch a few weeks ago kind of said, as Pee Wee would say, "You say anything that you want to say about me." So Pee Wee had a son named Peter, and Peter was an alcoholic, and Peter had been in and had gotten into enormous problems with his drinking. It had also affected him in a way that he, as so many of us do during our disease, it was impossible to be able to think clearly or understand what the reality of the situation was. And Pee Wee created such enormous resentments against his own parents that he, at one point in time, during his drinking, considered trying to have somebody hurt them for what he perceived to be his rightful inheritance or money. I mean, Peter at this time is in his 20s. I don't know where all she went or how many people she talked to, but she wound up coming to visit with me, and we did an intervention. Peter went to treatment in Twin Town in St. Paul and embarked on his own recovery that lasted for a number of years. Pee Wee, if you know Pee Wee, who, number one, is not just a storyteller, she is actually an author. She loved a good story, and this story was very personal to her. And one of the people that she wanted to go tell this story to was Jane Norton. Jane, in a sense, as I understood it, my perspective is that Jane was kind of like a surrogate aunt to Pee Wee. There were 3 or 4 women that Jane was very, very close to, a generation younger than her, that they felt like that they just wanted to be around this woman and soak up her wisdom and spend time with her and all that, and she likewise with them. So Pee Wee then decided that she wanted Jane Norton to meet John Walsh. That you almost had to have been there. I grew up at Hancock and Washington Street. I had no idea where Glenview was, didn't care. I couldn't have found it if you gave me a Google map, which hadn't been invented yet. But there was a part of it that wasn't like I didn't care. It's just like, well, why would this person want to come and meet me? But Pee Wee, in her way, decided that she wanted that answer to be part of the experience. So she and a couple of her friends brought Jane Norton to meet me, which leads me to the Jane Norton story. We had a nice 25-minute visit in a little bitty dumpy office that I was operating out of. It was probably 2 rooms that would have been whatever 10 by 10 is times 2 with a little bit of waiting room, might have been 300 square feet. And we had a delightful time talking, and she asked me a bunch of questions about what I believed in and why I believed in that. And we wandered across such things as, why did I believe that families were important in all this? Why did I think that God had a role in people getting better? Did I believe that marijuana was a safe drug? Because at that time there was quite a bit of controversy about that, not just out in the communities, but in legislation. Now we're talking about early 80s. We're not talking about last week. Sounds like we're kind of revisiting a few of these things. So we talked and had a nice time. And she got up, and in her way, she couldn't hardly do this today, but she always called me young man, because I was young man at that time. She says, young man, it's very nice to meet you. Let me know what I can do to help you. And I'm kind of thinking, okay, cool, great. Say a prayer and send a client. Because at that point in time, I might have had 30 clients. And frankly, it was okay. So she leaves, and I don't hear anything from anybody. Pee-wee thanked me for visiting with her. And about 8 weeks later, I get a telephone call from Ms. Norton. And she says, young man, I haven't heard from you. And I was thinking, God, was I supposed to call? I mean, did I blow something here? I said, no. And she says, I told you when I left, let me know what I can do to help you. And I said, Mrs. Norton, I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I'm doing what I do, and you do what you do, and I think it's great, and I so much appreciate meeting you and all that. And she says, I think we have to sit down and have a serious talk about this. So I said, okay. So she came, and she says, listen, you didn't know this, but I had already been part of a publishing company that published a book called Marijuana Revisited. Pretty old book. Where basically she had gone, or whoever had gone and gotten a bunch of scientists to really drill in and take a look at what THC content was all about, the differences in marijuana then versus what they were like in the 60s, et cetera, stuff that people in the field know and we've always known. And she says, so I had a reason to ask you that question. I also believe strongly that God plays a role in all of our lives. And it would be impossible if I believed that to believe that God wouldn't have a role in the recovery life of people. She says, so I want to do something with you, but I don't know what to do. I'm not of your field. I don't do what you do. I had, at the time, a small private practice. I was eating about 50% of my receipts. I had a solid, legitimate partner named Pat Whalen. And when she kept asking me, what can I help you to do? She says, is there something you can do for families? So I thought about it, and there was already some things that I was doing. I thought, this may work. The Thurston B. Morton Fund Incorporated story. So basically, we put together a small program where I would go to cities around the state for weekends, Friday night, all day Saturday, part of Sunday morning, and we would invite professionals in those areas, addiction professionals, counseling professionals, mental health professionals, and we also invited them to invite their client families with them. And we had already created a program. That's not accurate. I had gotten a program from some people in Richmond, Virginia, brought it to Louisville, called the Concerned Persons Program. A lot of people do it still today. So we would use the Concerned Persons Program as the educational format, and then I would get on stage with people and help them work with some of these families. So there was the presentation, but then the kicker is that we told these professionals, if you want to do this, and you want to subscribe to this model, this thinking, Ms. Norton is willing to then make sure that you would have 1 year of free training and consultation in terms of how to fully incorporate this into your practice. Because our goal is to get as many people involved in working with families as was humanly possible. So I went to 3 or 4 cities. It was a great experience. I met some great people in Paducah, Mount Sterling, Bowling Green. And a little bit after we had been doing that, she called me up. Young man, we have a problem. I said, oh, something happened? What's going on? No, it's the opposite. We started this fund, and this fund is a 501c3, and I made some phone calls to some people that I know and asked them to give us some money. And they all very generously responded. So what's happening now is we have this money and we're not doing enough services. And the government's going to kind of look at us at some point in time and say, come on. And she says, so we need to do more. So I said, not a problem. Not a problem at all. We'll put ads in the national journals. I'll find somebody for you. We'll bring them in here. I'll help interview them, and we'll figure out who they are, and we'll hire them, and we'll put them in charge, because I like what I do. I like working with patients. And she says, young man, you don't quite understand. Which leads us to the Morton Center story. She says, I want to do what you do, but I don't want us to reinvent the wheel. So I want to take the generosity of the people that I've already approached, and I want to couple that with what you already do. You already see families. You already see individuals. You already see alcoholics and addicts. You already do interventions. Why can't we take this and do something with this and do it in a way without regard for people's financial ability to pay or not pay? Would you be willing to do that? I had 2 young boys. They were just getting ready to go to St. X. I had about 1/7 of the money to be able to afford that. I hadn't had a steady salary in a long time, because some of you know, if I think that I'm supposed to be doing something, I'm going to be doing it, and money's going to figure itself out. It kind of made sense in a lot of different ways. And out of that 30-minute talk in January of 1984, the Morton Center started April 1st of 1984. We basically took our clients from our private practice, which at that time might have gotten up around a total of 150 that we had seen within the last year. We had, I'm pretty sure we had 3 15-year-old desks. There were 6 employees, and we began the Morton Center. Now, to say that the rest is history is it's actually kind of boring, because there's nothing boring from that day forward. We knew at the beginning, and boy, was she super involved with this philosophy. We knew from the beginning that we had to give our clients and their families the absolute best treatment that we could give them. Sometimes that meant we had to discover what that is, because it was not always available to us. So we had to figure out what best meant. We already knew that once we figured it out, we were not adequately prepared or trained to do some of the things that were best. So we had to make sure that we trained up to it. And we knew that we had to deliver it in a very, very caring and confident manner. It's an interesting word. But we wanted to demonstrate to people that not only was there hope, but we had great belief that they would get better. We also wanted to make sure that they had the dignity and respect that they deserved. It's no disrespect to what had gone on in our field and in our communities, and in a lot of communities, not just this community. Our addict and alcoholic patients and their families, they were not always treated with dignity and respect. They were treated in a way that most of them felt anyway. Sometimes shameful, sometimes critical, sometimes judgmental. I'll never forget, we had a space in the DuPont Professional Towers at that time, and it was the lower lobby, and there actually had been a nightclub that had burned there, and Walsh Whalen took over that space when they redid it. Lower lobby, lots of plate glass. Hell, we didn't have enough money for coverings. By that time, now the Morton Center comes in, and we had a few groups already. I just remember doing a women's addiction group. And we were actually had the luxury of kind of walking our groups through our very small space and saying, where would you like for your group to be? And we're able to accommodate that because nothing was already in there. And they all said, well, we like this room. So it was bright, and it was a sunny day just like today. It was actually in June. And I said to them, we have no window coverings. I want you to be aware of that. If you want to do group in this room, I'm going to do group in this room. If you don't, it's okay. We've got some interior rooms. And they said, we're going to do group in this room. It was a very, very compelling in terms of how people felt about what it was that they wanted and deserved and that they were going to get. It was easy for us to follow some of that. We also had an obligation, and Mrs. Norton was just so, it wasn't a point that she was generous. She was generous. But she had a generous heart and a generous spirit. And she was our leader. And she said, you do this. And we just can't let money get in the way of this. Now, there were times, and there are board members in this room, there were times everybody had to get their checkbook out during the board meeting to make sure we make payroll next month. They were hard times. But everybody stuck with this and stuck with it together. The last thing I'm going to say about Mrs. Norton was, so the original board, and I'm pretty sure I'm accurate with this, was Jane Norton, her son-in-law Al Shands, Clay Morton, as he was modeling for everybody what it was like to discover some of your own issues and do something about it. John Speed and Alice Carey Brown. That was it. Jane Morton never wanted to hear anything about the financials. She didn't want to hear about this. She'd kind of sit dutifully through the meeting. And at the end, she'd look over at me and she'd say, tell me some stories. Tell me about the people. Tell me the stories of the people that are coming here and how they're doing. That was what I always respected about her. The money was great. Without it, we wouldn't be. She passed away in 1989, and in her bequest to us, it really kind of helped put us over a hump. By 1989, we were seeing somewhere close to 1,500 different people a year. By 1989, we were in 3 cities, I think. By 1989, we had been chosen to be the group that treated all of the healthcare professionals across this state. Not just the doctors, nurses, dentists, pharmacists, physical therapists. We made some inroads with some of the lawyers. She left us at that point in time, but left us in good standing. Not just with her money, but with the way that she knew. She knew a long time before I knew. I did not know at the beginning what this was going to become. Where would we go with this? she constantly gave me feedback that we were going to be it, and this was going to work, and that we were going to help lots of people. So when she left us, we had really actually kind of gotten there. There was a lot of tools to still sharpen and a lot of things to still grab a hold of. We started our first intensive outpatient program in 1989. It was a collaboration with Our Lady of Peace Hospital. We later had a collaboration with the Healing Place, where we took and trained their staff in for their women to be re-engaged with their children. We collaborated everywhere we could, but we also stayed really busy looking at what it was we were supposed to do. So, as I look out today, and I mean, wow, it's a treat. It's a treat to see you. Some of you I haven't seen for a really long time. It just doesn't seem possible. But it's the truth. Some of you I've just recently met. Some of you are friends. But Mark kind of said it. Honestly, I had written it down before he said it, but I want him to realize that. You are the Morton Center. Whether you're a client now or have been a client, whether you're a board member now or you were a board member, whether you work there now or you used to work there, whether you're a family member that had somebody get better there, whether you're a family member their person went there and didn't get well, we are not and have never been perfect. Whether you're a major donor or whether you struggle sometimes to even consider, can you actually give $10 or not, and that's a decision for you. We did know from the beginning it could not be us, this small cadre of people that kind of came together either serendipitously or absolutely through divine intervention to start this. We would need everything that we could gather, and the only way we knew how to do it at that time was to work as hard as we could, produce a successful product, and let that product speak for itself. What a thrill. Thank you.
For the record, Mr. Walsh, I remember you and your cha-cha. So, it's like 11 years ago, wasn't it? How is that 11 years ago? I was like 23, just moved here by myself, had no idea, but I do remember you for sure. I wouldn't forget you. On behalf of the Morton Center and WLKY, I would like to thank everybody for attending. Please don't forget to give your pledge cards to your table host. We also have a basket at the table out there with the lovely ladies out there. They're waving. You can drop the pledge cards out there. Just remember, every little bit helps. So anything you can do will help the Morton Center. Again, thank you for helping so many families in our community. I get the question sometimes, why are you so passionate about addiction? I haven't really shared this publicly, but about 11 years ago, about the same time, hopefully I don't get emotional about this. I called her my sister, but she was my cousin. We were about 10 months apart, and my parents raised her because her mom and dad had addiction issues. And we grew apart. My parents were still taking care of her two little girls who were 7 and 2. And I was here in Louisville. It was a Saturday. My mom keeps calling me. I'm like, Mom, I'm about to be on the news. You know this. It's like 6 o'clock. And I could tell in her voice that something was wrong. And all she could say was, the girls are dead. And so I thought, what? And so my cousin had gotten in a car after getting really high with her daughters, going about 80 miles an hour and hit a truck. And they all died. So that's why I'm passionate about this. So thank you for asking me to be a part of this.
Jennifer, thank you for sharing that. Thank you very much. To everyone, thank you so much for coming today and for your continued support with the Morton Center. Look out for next year's date for the luncheon. Also wanted to share with you all one of the exciting things we have going on. October 12th, which there's information on your table, we're doing a family festival. An event for the entire family, which John just shared the important work of being able to help and support the family. So this family festival, we will have so much fun for the entire family. So it'll be at the Morton Center parking lot. We hope that you will come, bring your kiddos. You'll have so much fun, I promise. I know my 2 little ones just cannot wait to get their face painted. So there will be a long line for that, guarantee that. So enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you so much again for coming, and just anything that we can do to help you, please reach out. Thank you.